Love finances the other F word and want to support the show? Become a patron by going to patreon.com/FTOFW. You'll get special features, a shout out on the air, and early releases. Or if you prefer, pick up some merchandise at financestheotherfword.com.
As fantastic a CFP as Mel O is, and as wonderful an attorney as I am, please do note that anything said in our show are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to Finance the Other F Word. And today we are going to talk about artificial intelligence and how it is affecting the music industry and how it is affecting the global economy overall. And when I first started researching this, I thought that it was going to be pretty boring. And to be honest with you, it was. So I'm going to disclaim this whole show right now. If you guys are tech junkies, I guarantee you know more about artificial intelligence than I do. And Stormy was a big tech guy, was a big artificial intelligence guy. I'm looking at it from a global level and just kind of a more of amusing as far as how it could move global economies. But we're not a tech show, so I'm not going to sit here and, go deep into it because half of it I don't fucking understand myself. But I want to give you guys enough knowledge because you need to know how all this stuff is interconnected, because when you're looking at potential investments and you're looking at things like that, it's important for you to kind of understand the changes that are coming in at a macro level that can end up filtering down into your investment options. And again, that's what I'm trying to do with the show is kind of show you guys how everything is related. But first, we're going to have Zoe start us out with some good artificial intelligence and how it's affecting music, hopefully in a positive way, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think generally the consensus is that it's an exciting time for music as far as AI is concerned, although there's also, particularly from Grimes, and of course we all fucking care what Grimes has to say.
She's my favorite person ever.
Yeah, I know, me too. Her and hubby or partner or whatever they are. But yeah, I mean, my research, I'm only scratching the surface here with AI and music, and I've concentrated on a couple of articles, one from Time magazine in 2020, and will as usual give you all the resources, and another from BBC Science Focus magazine from this year. So I'm going to just talk about the first one now, and then the other one at the end of the show.
Ballot.
Yeah, just to, because I think you really want to hear my voice all the time. So I'm going to start and give you the happy ending as well.
Love 2 times, babe.
Right. So, like I said, the first article that I kind of referenced is an article in Time magazine from February 2020 by Andrew Chow. And he started off by referencing, as we said, our favorite person, Grimes, when she predicted in November 2019 that we're at the end of human art. And when there's artificial general intelligence, they're going to be better at making art than us. And they're going to make musicians obsolete, which really. And that apparently caused a meltdown. With people already concerned that artificial intelligence is taking jobs away from blue collar workers. Now everyone's concerned that not only that, AI is going to take away the personal art form of music, and that caused a shitstorm. But as I said, let's take anything that Grimes and says with a huge pinch of salt. And I think, as I said, on the whole, from what I've read, most people see it as just another advance in technology and a new that can produce and has produced a new wave of creativity. And the article references artists which frankly I haven't heard of, but Mel is going to include some AI produce songs on our Spotify playlist at the end. There's artists such as Arca, Holly Herndon, and Toro E. Moy, including, and some others that I'm going to mention, have been using AI for a while to push their music into new directions. And Arca is apparently a producer who's worked with Kanye West and Bjork. Who doesn't love a bit of Bjork? Crazy little Icelandic Bjork. You don't like Bjork?
Nope, we've talked about this.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're right. I do. I like her. But anyway, and like I said, this producer Arca is very excited about AI.
All of them, same thing.
Yeah, same thing. I'm turning into my grandmother now. I'll be calling it AIs before you know
it.
It's a wide, and see it as a wide open horizon of possibility, and just shows you that not everything has been done already. There's always new things. Now, AI isn't actually all that new, and it's had a long relationship with music already. Alan Turing built a machine in 1951 that generated 3 simple melodies, and the wonderful David Bowie played around with digital lyric randomizers in the 1990s. The one he used was called the verbicizer. And in this, around the same time in the 1990s, a music theory professor trained a computer program to write new compositions in the style of Bach, however you say it, Bach. And when the compositions that he generated using this system was played alongside a genuine Bach piece, the audience couldn't tell them apart. So this is, you know, in some form or another, it's been happening for a while. But the first pop album that was ever composed using AI was released in 2018 by Francois Pache, and it was called Hello World. So we'll have to have a listen. I haven't heard it. And in 2019, Holly Herndon released an album called Proto, where she harmonized with an AI version of herself, which is kind of, I think it's kind of cool. You know, it's just experimentation. It doesn't mean that they're going to take over. But the consensus seems to be that AI is you know, evolving, and it's come a long way, but it's still not good enough to create a song that you'd rather listen to all by itself over a real artist. And they this article cites a song that was created in 2016 called Daddy's Car, which was an AI song that was meant to mimic the Beatles. And it was developed by researchers at Sony using software called Flow Machines, which apparently, you know, you can kind of get is Beatles inspired, but it's just, I was
gonna say, because baby, you can drive my car. That's the first thing I thought of when you said Daddy's Car, like that riff, that melody.
You can tell that it's Beatles inspired, but it's a hot mess apparently. And I think the general consensus is that the AI may be able to generate, whether it be music or lyrics, but you still need human input to edit it. You know, it's not churning out a polished song or polished lyrics. You still need someone to actually put it together and edit it. You know what I mean? But there is a place for it, definitely, as things form. And I'm just gonna, before I pass it on to Mel for some kind of money, I was just going to mention some other AI songs that have been out and about. There's a British Iranian musician called Ash Kusha who developed an AI pop star called Yona, and she writes songs, or he writes songs, she writes songs through generative software. In Berlin, there's a duo called Dada Bots, and they use AI for death metal music. And AI is apparently huge in Berlin. Then there's somebody called Taryn Southern, who's a big YouTube celebrity, and she was also a contestant on American Idol. And she released a single in 2017 called Break Free, and that used AI as a tool. And in an interview, she said that AI has really helped her because she's great at writing songs, but she knows very little about music theory. So AI helped her I guess, with what chords to use and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So again, you still need the human behind the AI to finish the song. And then a Grammy nominated producer Alex da Kid used IBM Watson to analyze 5 years of hit songs and other data to figure out a theme for an AI generated song called Not Easy. And that reached number 4 on the iTunes Hot Tracks chart within 48 hours of release. Now, so, you know, these songs are apparently pretty popular. Now, something that I found really interesting, and particularly because this is a topic that we're going to touch on in another episode of the show, is there's a collaboration, another song it's called Drowned in the Sun, in the style of Nirvana. And it's part of the Lost Tapes of the 27 Club. And that's something that we're going to talk about in a future episode, is a 27 Club. And it features songs mostly written and performed by AI in the style of musicians who died at the age of 27, like Jimi Hendrix, Amy Winehouse, Jim Morrison. And this AI program, it analyzed up to 30 songs of each of these musicians and then generated a new song for each of them. And it was made by this Toronto organization called Over the Bridge, and they help members of the music industry who are struggling with mental illness. So that seemed like an interesting concept, and I'd be interested to listen to that song. And anyway, that's just some songs that are out there already, but there's many more, and I'm going to chat a bit more about the legal implications and a bit more about what AI actually is after Mel has talked some more about money.
So when I started researching this, I originally was going to break it down into categories like, okay, this is how it's going to affect stock, and this is how it's going to affect international trade. And the bottom line is that we don't really know how it's going to affect those things. We can speculate at best. And when I really started getting down to it, I was like, let's just look at all of the ramifications. So part of investing, especially when you get these people on your TikToks and your Instagrams and things like that, who think that they're financial professionals, but they're not. They want to spend so much time convincing you that they know they have a fucking indicator that's going to tell you when to buy or sell, or they want to spend so much time trying to convince you that they know how to pick stocks. And the bottom line is that when you're in the industry, you need to have a understanding of macro trends that are coming in to the global market and into the domestic economy, so that you can have a better understanding for trends that might not be visible yet. And the thing that's so funny is that they're programming more and more AI to find these invisible trends and find these patterns. And so we're going to get into that too. And so when I realized that it's so heavy technology, and that's not my forte, you guys, it's not what I do, I'm like, okay, let me just back up here and let me just look at this from a money perspective and kind of a generalized perspective. And so the easiest way I could break it out is just really to explain to you guys kind of the pros and cons and the basics of AI and their extended potential ramifications. Okay. So let's just start with some basic definitions when it comes to artificial intelligence, or AI, or IA, if you're Zoe, however you want to do it. So damn it, Zoe, now you got me doing it. There's narrow AI, and then there's general self-learning systems. So, and there's other types of AI, but we're just going to focus on those two because, again, we're not a tech show. So your narrow AI would be things like your chatbots, right? So now, everybody knows you can't call and speak to a living, breathing human anymore. You got to go through the fucking Olympic hurdles of trying to get a chatbot before you can get to an actual person. Self-driving vehicles use what's considered narrow AI, and translation services. Okay. Then you have general self-learning systems that can actually learn from experience, and there are projected to be able to mimic on a high level at some point human performance. And that's the one that people are most concerned about, because that's, I think, where you start coming out of the realm of it being a tool versus it being something that could be kind of fucking dangerous, right? And so there's a couple definitions we need to run through. because we're going to be talking about it. One of them is DNN, which stands for Deep Neural Network. And this is where data or previous observations is used to layer on top of other observations to be able to modify a potential outcome. So a lot of what we do in this show is exactly that. You know, we talk about the US power grid, and we talk about the issues that are coming up against it and what they're trying to do in that sector. And then we bring it back around to the difference between investing versus trading in that sector. And so a lot of what I'm trying to do is layer you guys with information so that you can be better aware of all of the economic trends that are forming, or not all of them, obviously, but, you know, a good understanding as much as I can provide you with an understanding of things that are happening. Then you have general purpose machine learning, which is when the deep neural network combines a whole bunch of different machines learning tasks, and then it creates a general purpose machine, or called a GPML. Now, AI needs huge amounts of data. Okay. And so one of the things that when you sit down with a financial planner is that they will run a Monte Carlo simulation. And a Monte Carlo simulation is, you know, there's a lot of these people on social media will be like, oh, take how much money you have and do 4% of it, and that's how much money you can live off of a retirement. That's fucking bullshit, you guys. First of all, they don't fucking know. A, they don't have enough information. B, they don't fucking know. And C, that is a traditional outdated model, in my opinion. A Monte Carlo simulation goes back, and it goes, you know, as much data as far back as it can into the stock market, and it predicts different outcomes. So it tries to show you, okay, based on, you know, a 4% distribution rate, how fast are we going to pull down our money, assuming that we're taking all of these performances. So we're taking it 2008, and then we're taking it 2011, and we're taking all of these different data sets, and we're trying to average them out to get a better understanding of how plausible it's going to be that somebody is going to have enough income to go throughout their entire retirement until their age of death. Okay, so that's kind of a version of AI. Monte Carlo simulations need huge amounts of data like AI does. So cloud computing and big data, of course, use AI. If you guys have ever been on Amazon, you know that's the truth with the, you know, you might also like, or people also bought, you know, whatever. And AI has what's called as a known value chain, which is made up and comprised of 5 steps, which literally past what I'm about to tell you, we're not going to get into anymore, but I wanted to just kind of fill this out so you guys have kind of an understanding of AI as general as I can get it. The 5 steps are data collection, then data storage, then data preparation, and then the engineering, and then the algorithm training, and then algorithm development. Okay. So that's all kind of the moving parts as far as in the AI. So let's look at a couple interesting things, and let's just go what the good aspects of, or potential aspects of, AI are. Okay. So according to the Wall Street Journal, it is predicted that AI, artificial intelligence, has the ability to add about 16% or $13 trillion into the global economic output by 2030. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as far as why that is. And so that's kind of a projection. And that article was from 2019. So it could have moved up by then. Now, if we have one of the things that AI does provide is that it uses efficient algorithms, and the efficient algorithms allows you to kind of predict market conditions and supply and demand. And then what that will do is that the hope of that is that it's going to cause more predictive price fluctuations, which could be good or bad for consumers. Because one of the things that you do in the stock market, as well as one of the things that you do when you shop for groceries, is that there's all these little inadequacies and supply and demands get thrown off that can move a price to your advantage or your disadvantage at any time. And so with a potential AI algorithm coming in being very strong, you know, having more data, like in the Monte Carlo simulation that I was talking about before, there's a more probable outcome that you can get more accurate data so that you can prepare for it. So that could level prices out. Think of commodities. So commodity is anything that's the same anywhere you buy it. So think of carrots as a commodity, or pork bellies as a commodity. and having an AI come in and be able to take into consideration, days when we had a frost that might have come in and killed an apple crop or an orange crop. For those of you who have watched Easy Money, or not Easy Money, what's the fucking one? Shit, the one with Eddie Murphy. It's not Easy Money. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. It's from the 80s.
Trading Places.
Trading Places. Thank you. And I would say we've talked about it on the show before. And that's what the whole end of the show is based on, is an early frost in the orange market. And so what it does is it uses a huge amounts of data to help try to predict different patterns that are not really obvious to the naked eye, or patterns that are so deep in the data that in order for like a human being to be able to bring all that shit together would take fucking forever. And so when you have these really detailed AI and these algorithms, it kind of speeds up, and it could hopefully find different indicators for you as far as to weed out any type of, inadequacies in pricing and things like that. So if we can end up streamlining everything, then what happens is that we make the supply chains more efficient. And the theory is that we lower prices globally. So it's just kind of the same as, like drop shipping or coming in and having the logistics of something come in, where you can shorten the supply chain. So maybe your produce gets there faster, or maybe your product is only created when necessarily, like I said, in the event of, like, say, drop shipping. So it's kind of it streamlines the process to make it a little bit easier that you can do small batch orders that are very specific to a consumer's desires, or you can maybe even do one-offs depending on the type of product. We also talked about AI in the US Power Grid episode. And we talked about how they were trying to upgrade the United States power grid in a way that would allow AI to go in and predict problems using data sets, and or be able to find in the network where there starts to be hangups and problems, so that they can isolate a situation on the grid that needs to be fixed, and they can do it before it ends up throwing or stressing out other parts of the power grid. So again, this is all connected, you guys. So you really need to kind of understand how all this stuff goes hand in hand. Now, AI can also make using robots a lot easier. And so it used to be in the 80s when they started shipping to, changing to robots on the assembly lines. It might have even been in the 70s. Everybody was freaked out because they're going to put us out of business. As a matter of fact, in the 80s, there was, I think like 87, there was a movie called Gung Ho, and it was about Asians coming in to an American car dealer, car industry maker, and wanting to basically outsource all the workers and put robots in. And of course it doesn't happen, and it's unrealistic, but it was a good movie at the time. And so with AI, you can make it easier to make warehouses more efficient. And then you can have robots that can come in and do packaging and things like that, maybe repetitive natures. Now, the reason why this is important, and even though it might not seem important, is because there's a lot of indicators that go in the market. And I'm not talking about these assholes on social media that think they could just recreated the wheel and they have the best indicator and they're going to give you some fucking bullshit. Like some, and I can say this here, but I can't say it on TikTok because of the algorithm doesn't like my vulgar language, but you guys are cool. So I can tell you, there was a guy that was on TikTok that said, I think I told you about this, Zoe, right?
I don't know what you're going to say, but
okay, yeah. So there was this person on TikTok that said that they had made $1.3 million in 4 days using this indicator. Yeah. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, dude, if somebody made 1.3 million, first of all, they don't tell you what they started off with, but if they made $1.3 million in 4 days, wouldn't you be getting your dick sucked by somebody somewhere? I mean, the last thing I'm doing is running to fucking TikTok, right? So that's just I want to say that on TikTok, and I would, but I'm not allowed to because I've already gotten dinged twice for vulgar language. So I apologize in advance if you guys are new to the show and that offended anybody. But one of the indicators that we look at to see potentially where the market could go is the inventory to sales ratio. And so what they do is they look at the inventories, they see if the inventories are low, then that means people are buying, or, this is very simplified version, or if the inventories are high, that might mean that people are, not very confident in the economy. And so therefore they're kind of hesitating and they're not really buying things. And so that indicator is a current projection of if they think that, production or the economy in general might slow down or move in the future. And so what happens is you have a lot of people who invest, who look at indicators such as that. And so if AI comes in and it can kind of cut a wave through the middle of it and it can make that more efficient, then the hope would be that it would make pricing more efficient. And then therefore you would be getting in to a investment at a decent price for the time. That's the hope anyway. So it can make deliveries faster. And if you can shorten the supply chain and you can maybe do something more locally, then maybe you could lower your carbon footprint. It could also lead to, or it also has led to, smaller businesses being able to market themselves on a global scale, which they just normally would not be able to do. And of course, we see that on, Amazon sellers, and we see that on, to a lesser extent, eBay, because eBay is kind of, going on the wayside now with Amazon's prowess and everything that's coming into the market. But we're seeing that it's allowing smaller businesses to get global attention as far as being able to take advantage of streamlining processes and using AI and everything like that. So those are kind of like all the good, positive kind of things. Now, when we look at the potential cons, we look at that in a couple different ways. We're gonna come at it. So in relationship to stocks, I've talked about that already. When you're talking about predicting the pricing, as far as like with information, a lot of the futures market and futures contracts and things like that is speculative. So yes, there's data points that people are processing. There's already AI that is being used to be able to take large sets of data and process them, so that if you are one who is doing a futures contract, then you can have a better understanding of your potential risk by doing the contract. So we talked about trading places, and we've talked about futures contract on the show before. That is just where you're doing a contract where you're either, betting on the price of something to go up, or you're actually trying to protect your downside risk. And those are all contracts. And then you have the futures. This would like the after hours trading. And as far as just kind of speculation of what the Dow might do or the S&P might do or other indicators. So if you do this, then what could happen is that you could basically take a lot of the inefficiencies out of the market, which is good. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who make money off of the inefficiencies. So that's kind of one of the things. The second thing is that if it eliminates, and so we talked about the potential for lessening the carbon footprint. But if we shorten the supply chain, what that would in essence do is that could potentially eliminate a lot of the lower paying jobs. And like Zoe had touched on, all the resources are going to be in the show notes. You can go there, click on the articles if you so wish. And a lot of the countries right now who are not developed nations use a lot of these manufacturing jobs, and they're paid, very little, which we've talked about before. And they have these jobs, but if they streamline the process where they can start eliminating those jobs, then what happens is we have a whole bunch of emerging countries and frontier countries that are dependent on those jobs that now have to start accelerating even faster, and or could actually stunt them, because as you're, think of like the United States, when we came into the Industrial Revolution, we were primarily agriculture, then the Industrial Revolution kind of happened, and then we kind of moved through like that. So all these emerging markets and frontier countries are kind of in the same way. So depending on how AI, they could affect those paying jobs. And then of course there's job loss here stateside in the United States that people are concerned about. Like if you have a robot that can pack everything and move everything. I mean, these Amazon warehouses we talked about on the episode, Amazon, the Monopoly, we talked about how fucking big Amazon's warehouse is. And if you can eliminate every single worker that works in that warehouse, just in that one local warehouse, and you replace it with robots who have this backing of this AI, you just wiped out a whole swath of people that could have major detrimental effects to a local economy. And this could be the same thing with car manufacturers. I mean, Boeing, whatever, put it in here. Seattle, Tacoma area is very dependent on Boeing. Boeing has AI, a whole bunch of robots come in. Well, guess fucking what? Now you got all your planes and shit being built by robots, et cetera, et cetera. So job loss is always a concern. But the further concern is that eventually AI, like when we talked about the general learning machines, when we first started here, is that the concern is that they will get so smart that they'll eliminate high paying jobs too. So doctors and lawyers and shit like that. So because as they're learning things and they are able to take in new data so fast, they're just fucking constantly updating. And so before we know it, as everybody's concerned about the lower skilled, low paying jobs, the next thing you know, all of us are fucking out of a job because now it's came in and it's taken the high paying jobs out under its knees. Okay. Then there's the concern of how much fucking data that needs to be acquired in order to make AI be as beneficial as possible. Now, the thing is that, if you take a country like Canada, United States, China, they have big populations of people. So they have a good data set as far as enough people that they can get information from. But if you're Malaysia, okay, or Vietnam or a smaller country like that, you don't have as big of a population. You don't have as many data points, which means that it's very hard for them to be able to be on an equal footing to keep up with the AI race. If you guys, get what I'm saying. And we've talked about that before on this show. And if you're so inclined, it's over 300 episodes, go back and you can look. Now, the thing is that if that's the case, there are people who like to invest in frontier countries and there's people who like to invest in emerging countries. So if AI all of a sudden starts being controlled by the largest countries globally that have the most money, that has the most military power, then what happens is that you start edging out these smaller countries who are going to be kind of left behind as AI kind of takes over the global economy kind of as a swath. Now, the other thing is that there's, of course, the concern of personal data, right? Because Amazon, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, the amount of, even if you don't do check-ins on Facebook, and even if you don't very rarely post pictures, please fucking believe they know what the fuck you're looking at. Instagram, the same thing. They know if you hover over an ad, if you're on Facebook and you look at a fucking ad for longer than, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, that motherfucker pops up again and again and again. And that's fucking AI. So that's all personal data that they're just compiling on you over and over and over again. And so the concern is that where does there become a breach of liberties, of individual liberties? And so the EU has formed the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, which prohibits transfers of personal data to certain countries that have not been deemed adequate. And this is by the European Commission. So I've just been on the phone. I had a massive email and tech failure the last couple of weeks. I've been dealing with Microsoft. Their recording now says, blah, 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 we'll be with you in a minute. Your data is being sent out of country, which is scary as fuck. Not that I'm doing that much stuff, but we're talking about emails. We're talking about other types of software systems. And now they've disclosed it, but they're not changing it because obviously it's cheaper for them to get service labor outside of the United States, which we've talked about before, and how that increases their profit margins. And how do we manage intellectual property? Because there is intellectual property and there's trademarks and there's copyrights. But anytime, so we have on the show, I don't know if it's going to air before or after this, we spoke to Ewok from Appalachian Outlaws and from Moonshiners. And he has a recipe, a whiskey recipe from 200 years ago. That's his family. That's intellectual property. So things like that need to be protected. Where does things start going between fair use and start treading on to the fact that somebody is actually infringing on something that should be intellectual property? And this is one of the things that the United States has been butting heads with China over. is the fact that there is the conversation that China is coming in and taking a lot of our IP. And so there's a whole bunch of issues and it starts getting really, really nasty. Another thing that would have to change is basic standards. So think of a car, there's standard safeties, right? That cars have to do, and they have to match these standards, right? But now there's self-driving cars, which uses AI. And so what that means now is that there's a whole new set of standards that needs to be created in order to keep up with how the self-driving cars have changed the games. And now let's take that just a step further and let's talk about DUIs. Because operating a vehicle while under the influence, that's a DUI. But what happens if you're in a self-driving car and you're drunk, but you're not technically driving?
Isn't that the only reason you'd want to use a self-driving car, is so you could be taken home?
I think that would be the biggest benefit myself. I mean, I would be like, oh, wait a minute, I can go get fucked up and still be able to get my car back to the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I believe the laws still are is that even if you're in a self-driving car and you're not technically driving, if you're under the influence, that's a DUI. But eventually what happens when you get in your car and all you have to do is push the button and say, take me home, and you can fucking pass out and go to sleep in the car and it just pulls you into your driveway. Is that still considered a DUI? So these are the standards that we're talking about that need to change as the AI is starting to crest and become a little bit more prominent. Now, the other things is cyber attacks. We talked about cyber attacks on our US power grid. We're going to end up having Jax on here, who is a expert in cybersecurity, and we're going to tie that into a lot of the cyber frauds that are going on right now. And the thing is that if you have all of this information kind of concentrated in one area and you have all of this huge amounts of data, is that susceptible to cyber attacks? Well, of course it is, right? And so that has to be another concern of it. And so that the episode with Jax will be, in the next coming, 2 months or so. Also, one of the things that the countries that are in power, United States, Canada, China, the big world powers that you're kind of thinking of, we are big countries. We already use, well, all countries, but big countries pack the biggest punch. We already use tariffs to submit countries into doing the policies that we want to have it do. And we've done tariff episodes, so go back and look at those. And so the thing is that if you have the bulk of the power with the AI and everything else, then you can manipulate that in a way, especially if you kind of have a good projection of what could happen in the event of XYZ happening, then it gives you a leg up on how you can basically submit a country into doing what it is that you want to. The other one is, I've told you guys 1,000 times on here that I have an issue. I want to close the gap between the 1% and the 99%. And AI is doing that on a global level, because as we just talked about, the biggest countries with the biggest military might and the biggest amount of money are going to be the ones that right now, as it is going to control the wave of AI coming into the future. And it's also going to control warfare in the future, because if you have AI and you have autonomous weapons of war, like think Skynet from the Terminator people, then they can go into an area, they can use that intelligence, and they can decimate in a much larger scale than what we've seen previously, maybe besides, nuking somebody. And so that's making the disparities between countries globally expand at a faster rate as more and more countries come on and start tuning into doing the AI. And of course, a lot of these concerns are, like Zoe had touched on in the article, or these are just anytime there's a new invention of any kind, think of printing press. Oh, it's going to put all the, copiers out of work and all this stuff. I mean, these are always concerns that are raised. But the thing is that when you're talking about, like, think of the 3D printing press, right? So that hasn't even really begun to come in to do everything that it can, but it's coming, and they're building bigger and bigger ones. And now there's actually a nonprofit, I believe, out of Las Vegas, where they want to use 3D printing to build houses for veterans. And so, don't think of a little desktop 3D printer, because those motherfuckers are getting big and they're going to start being able to print a whole bunch of shit. So going back to my AI thing, if you shorten your supply chain, and you have a 3D printer, that motherfucker prints out whatever it is that you're trying to ship. And if it's local, bam, that shit's there like today, right? And we already see that a little bit as far as Amazon keeping supplies on stock and things like that. And so AI is highly susceptible to policy risk. So when you're investing in stocks, you're investing in anything, there's a myriad of different risks: inflation risk, liquidity risk, default risk. There's a whole bunch of stuff. AI is very susceptible to policy risk, especially because we're talking about concentration of powers, right? And so what we have AI being wonderful and detrimental at the same time. But regardless, AI is coming. So the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement of Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is included the countries Australia, Brunei Darussalam, I know I said that wrong, I apologize, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, and Vietnam. And now the United States, Mexico, Canada agreement, which is those 3 countries, have all signed on to support the development of AI, but they've committed to share data to be able to start making the AI more efficient. But will that mean that the data that is provided is going to be equitable? Who knows, right? So I feel like every time I talk about anything new and I talk about from find out, like I totally bum everybody out. But I mean, these are trends that are coming, that when you're investing, it's not just about, what's its 52-week average, right? You need to look at things on a global arch, and you need to kind of see how they're could be best beneficial to you. At least that's what I do. So that's what I got. So I'll turn it back over to Zoe for some fun shit.
Okay. Oh, do you hear that? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Did I wear you out? It wasn't like, I know it's not like walking to the bus stop, but are you okay? Do you need a minute?
I'm probably gonna have to call my dad and let him know that.
Okay, that I wear you out. It's fine.
Out and shout at him down the phone and see if he can, just cuss him out for
People tell me I wear him out all the time.
Yeah. Oh well. Anyway,
Mel's a little saucy right now. A lot saucy.
Yeah, but let's save that for the end, because I've still got a bit to get through. Okay. So in terms of AI and music, some of the situations that it's used for quite a lot is for background music and other kinds of music in films where people don't want to use stock music. And composers Drew Silverstein, Sam Estes, and Michael Hobe created an app called Amper, which is very popular, and it allows non-musicians to create music for podcasts, commercials, videos, stuff like that. And they can use genre, mood, tempo, and it's one of apparently the easiest apps and softwares to use. And as I said, it came out of them being constantly asked for music for things like that. And now it allows people with no kind of or very little music background to create music themselves for these kind of things. And there's another app called Endel, which uses A1. Oh, it's A1 Source. Oh, look at me, I'm getting all salty. That uses AI to create personalized soundscapes, where it uses weather, heart rate, circadian rhythms to generate gentle music for each individual to help you sleep, study, or relax. So there's all kinds of uses for it. Now, Mel, you touched upon the legal implications of self-driving cars. There's also huge legal implications for AI and music. For example, copyright complications, because the current laws aren't written with AI in mind. So for copyright purposes, are the rights to music generated through AI, are they owned by the programmer who created the AI system? Are they created by the original musician? Or are they even owned by the AI itself? I mean, all of these things are going to have to evolve as the AI and the music combination does too, So that's something else to consider. Now, just to finish up, I want to just touch upon another article that was really interesting and that you can get to yourself. BBC Science Focus magazine by it was in that publication by Thomas Ling, and it was in June 2021, and they interviewed Professor Nick Brian Kins from the Queen's Mary University in London. And he was talking about how AI generated music is getting more and more sophisticated. And just like we've touched upon already, some use it to make new music from old artists like Amy Winehouse, Nirvana, Beatles, like we've talked about before, but also use it to create new music. And they mentioned, this made me laugh, they mentioned that there in July of this year was the second annual AI song contest. So a bit like this Eurovision Song Contest, only all of the songs were songs created using AI and from all countries around Europe. So I bet that was entertaining.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see my face. If you're not, it's pretty horrified.
Yeah, she's not interested in that. And also this article explained in a bit more detail exactly what AI is. And Mel touched upon this too, is AI uses neural networks that are huge computers, and they try and mimic how the brain works. And so as far as music is concerned, what you do is you throw a lot of music at it, and then it learns patterns and then spits out music. But as I said before, you still need human input as of right now, because you can throw all of Amy Winehouse's back catalog at it, but you still need someone to listen to what it churns out and edit it. You know, it doesn't come out with a fantastic polished song with fantastic lyrics. You still need someone to edit it. And also it may make music that the computer likes, but it doesn't necessarily make doesn't make music that humans like. And likewise with lyrics, it might create lyrics that are interesting, but think about it, and this was quite poignant. Generally, lyrics are about life experiences and feelings, and AI,
somebody and being dumped by somebody, and
yeah, AI doesn't have that capacity.
Right.
You know, it just spits out lyrics, and some of them can be really interesting and can probably by accident be quite poignant and deep, but you know, it's not coming from, you know, without being all sappy, it's not coming from your heart or your experiences. So that's right now not something that AI can't do. But one of the positives that this professor was talking about is that AI is really good at mashing up different genres of music and coming up with something spectacular. But he says, just like we've been saying in other aspects of the world, AI isn't going to put musicians out of work. They say that with every new invention, the gramophone, the electric drums, whatever. So every new invention, it's not. It's right now, it's just a tool that can help people, and just a new creative, what am I trying to say? A new creative outlet, I guess. And it also helps more people be able to make music because it's easier to do. These apps, like we mentioned, Amper and other things, it helps people who have very limited or no music ability to be able to create music. And isn't that a great thing? Wouldn't you want to be able to do that? So, you know, that's another benefit. And this Professor Brian Kins said it's more of a co-creation between AI and humans right now, as far as the music industry is concerned. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Although I want to listen to that Beatles song and then I'll decide. And that's it from me.
Yeah, I wonder what our Beatles collector would think about having a AI Beatles song. And that was one of the things that was so discouraging when I was looking at the AI, is that we're under the assumption that humans will not use this new technology to be disastrous, right? And as you were talking, it made me think of Jeff Goldblum. He has of course.
Because you're feeling saucy.
Because, well, that too, because fuck yeah. But in Jurassic Park, he said, God creates God creates dinosaurs, God kills dinosaurs. God creates man kills God, man creates dinosaurs. And that's kind of when I think about everything that's going on, just the way that everything is, kind of taking over, or feared to take over, as far as, the effect of the human soul on the arts and entertainment world in general. But, we also got holograms now where they can bring Tupac back to life. And,
I was going to mention Whitney, because it's Whitney Houston's birthday today. She would have been 58. Didn't they do a Whitney hologram at some point? I think they did.
Probably anybody that's dead, I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure they do it. But is there a time when we will go see Prince in hologram form? Maybe. Would we do it? I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I would be like, no, I don't want to see it if it's not the real thing. But like, if you brought Frank Sinatra back in hologram, fuck yeah, I'm gonna go see Frank Sinatra, because I want to catch that vibe, that old Vegas fucking black tie, fucking having sex with martini and cigar and shit. Like, that's, that vibe. So anyway, well, we appreciate you guys for listening. Make sure that you follow us on social media at Finance is the Other F Word. You can check us on TikTok. You can go to financeistheotherfword.com/links, and all of our social media platforms are there. And you can follow Lily Lou Mittens on Instagram. You can get my book, Finance is the Other F Word, Another F Word to Love, Barnes & Noble, Walgreens, Walmart, not yet. Walmart, Target, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon online. And then, of course, make sure that you listen to Kill Pop Radio and check our show on that. It's fucking awesome. And with that, I think we're out this bitch.
We are. That was me being AI. I know
I didn't like it, but I understood what you're doing. With that note, listeners, I'm going to cut her off right now. And she's sober. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Please check back for upcoming episodes and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Finances, the Other F Word.